Let me just confirm that that you can hear and see everything. You can hear the screen, hear me, and see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit. Well, you'll see. I hope I can make my point, but I want this to be a spirit-led discussion. Um, I have a personal tendency in me and a personal preference and uh, long years of habit of pursuing um, uh, education, whatever you want to call it, academia. I don't want this to be an academic uh, endeavor where I come and spoon feed you from my great knowledge. I have no great knowledge. I'm learning every day. And in him are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So I just pray the Lord will help me tonight and enable me. And so I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm not going to do these uh, highly uh, complex slides and this, that, and the other. I'm just going to introduce some topics and I want to discuss them. I believe these are topics that the Lord has laid on my heart. And I want to discuss them. If we don't make it through, we don't make it through. If we go longer, we'll go longer. I mean, however the Spirit would lead. And if you have a question, feel free to stop me. I hope we'll have space at the end for questions, or if not, we'll use that last few minutes for prayer. So, with the Lord's help, let's start. And so, in that regard, when we're talking about the Spirit, the words of the words of Yeshua, their spirit and they are life. And Peter said to him, Lord, to who else will we go? You know, you have the word of God, you have the word of truth. And in that sense, the Spirit blows where it wishes, from John 3. You hear the sound of it, but you don't know where it comes from, and you don't know where it's going. Everyone who is born of the Spirit, and would that it was, is that way, that we pursued the Spirit always with all our hearts. Now, I put in here the first bit of Matthew 5 because I wanted to kind of use this as an example. So I copied out the first 20 verses, which is about 400 words. It's about a half a page in Word. Um, if you were trying to write a paper or something in Word, it would be about a half of a page. And in this, you'll notice we start off with the Beatitudes, okay? And then he moves on to the salt of the earth, the light of the world. And then he begins to talk about not abolishing the law or the prophets. He's obviously pursuing the uh, the direction of the Spirit. And in this, whatever you want to call it, 400 words, of course, there were no verses, but in this short space, he's already talking about three different things. And so we need to rid ourselves of this mindset of, you know, we have to speak logically and progressively, and everything has to be a dissertation that begins with an introduction and ends with a recapitulation, and everything is you know lined up, and this and that. Now, I'm not saying the Lord doesn't have order, because the Lord is infinitely ordered. But if you look at the universe, you look at nature, it's not ordered in the way of man, it's not ordered in the way of the flesh. It's ordered with God's order. And if you ever take art lessons or something, the one thing they tell you is there are no straight lines in nature. So don't plan on drawing any straight lines. Now you can say, well, that building, well, that's man-made. Well, that tree, well, if you go up close enough to that tree, you can see it's not actually a straight line. So there is order, but it is the Lord's order. It's a living order. It's an organic order. It's not man's structure forced upon God's thought. And I'm kind of going all over the place here, but so be it. Anyway, so at one point, well, let me cover this first, and then we'll talk about some other things, and then we'll come back. So I wanted to look tonight at two words, and the Lord tied this all together. The Old Testament word nephesh, which we have right here, and the New Testament word suke, which I don't know Greek, but there it is. Now, nephesh, taken from the Hebrew, means breath. It can also represent a breathing creature, and it can be used in a number of different contexts. Primarily, it means soul. And so it refers to breath or to the human soul. Now, if you think about it this way, man was made from the earth. Adama is earth in Hebrew. Adam is man. And I had a real literal translation of Genesis where all the way through they referred to Adam as the dirt man, which is not that bad to be strictly literal. So the dirt man, the man made from the earth, our bodies are earthly, fleshly. We come from dust, and to dust we return, right? When God breathed upon that dust, that breath of God, that breath by the Spirit, created a living nephesh, or a living soul. So God's spiritual breath joined with the dirt, the clay of man, created this living soul. And we already know when we talked about the temple that we're a tripartite being. We have a body, we have a soul, and we have a spirit. And when God's spirit met with that clay, then he became a living soul, a nephesh. Now, when the Greeks were trying to, use the right word, their word is suke or psyche, which they also use to mean breath or soul. But I want to point out the difference, because I think just in these two words, there's the crux of a real difference between the Hebrew and the Greek. So nephesh refers to breath, the breathing out. And when you look at the Greek uses the word suke, psyche, whatever you want to call it. Well, with what do we associate that word? We associate it with psychology, with psychosis, with all those things having to do with the brain, right? So whereas the Hebrew soul is sort of from the neck down, breathing out, doing, walking. Uh, the Greek is thinking, thinking. It has to do with the mind, it has to do with the intellect. And probably summed up here with this thing from Rene Descartes, which is Latin, cogito ergo sum, which I don't know anything about, but it means I think, therefore I am. So it's a perfect summary of Greek belief. Uh, in thinking, in intellect, in the mind, in all these various things, that's where you find life. That's where you find your being. Now, Plato went so far as to take all of the physical and say that basically it was just a copy of a heavenly form. So, the Greeks began to, the body had to be perfect because it was being molded after this heavenly form. A table was being molded after the heavenly form of a table. So there's an intellectual uh, realm, and then there's the material realm. And the material realm was always considered to be dirty and nasty and untouchable and etc. Um, and that's why Plato, in his the Republic, he said that cities had to be run by philosophers because they were the only ones who could get in touch with that ideal realm. Um, Hebrew is exactly the opposite. It's all about acting, doing, breathing, walking. Uh, uh, Everything is an expression not just of the mind, but of the body. Like we talked about teshuvah, it's a complete turning around. It's not just changing your mind, it's turning yourself around and going 180 degrees the other way. So I thought it was really good that just these two words, just comparing these two words, can show us the drastic difference between the Hebrew worldview and the Greek worldview. And the Greek is what we're trying to rid ourselves of. So while I'm there, I'm going to skip over to here and I'll go back and put them in order before I send them out to you. Now, uh, this is partially review. I didn't send out that week this uh, slide, so I'm going to include it in this week's to make sure that everybody has it. Um, the life of Yeshua did not play itself out within the framework of Greek culture, but within the Jewish culture and a specific type of Jewish culture, the Jewish culture that existed in first century Israel. As a result, things are said the way they are said, things that happen the way they happen, things that are written the way they are written because of this specific Jewish frame of reference. So, overall, was this Jewish frame of reference? Statements, situations, issues presented in the New Testament were commonplace in the Jewish world of Yeshua's day. Now, because it was so common and this frame of reference was always available, the larger church chose to ignore it, resulting in a lot of theological confusion. In the course of the history, church wars were fought, denominations were split, new denominations developed over little phrases. I won't go into all that. Um, all led um, into all these various splits and denominations and all this uh, squabbling that could have been done away with by a full understanding of the gospel in the context of the Jewish background and with understanding the Jewish phraseology and Jewish terms. And I guess what I'm trying to get across to you is, uh, this is not optional. It's not, well, if you want to really pursue the Lord and you really want to know who Yeshua is, you're going to have to abandon that Greek way of that Greek approach. And you're going to have to give yourself over to this Jewish worldview, at least as far as understanding. Now, I'm not saying you have to put on a kippah and go down to the shul and put the tallis on and go to synagogue every Saturday, or you have to start, stop eating pork. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But I'm talking about a specific mindset, and it's not optional. We have to be able to understand the Bible in the context in which it was intended. Um, Let me go on with this next phrase here. Uh, we've seen this before, but I'm just going to go over it again. The majority of Jesus' disciples came not from a Jewish sect, but from the mainstream of Judaism. Now, we know there was Simon Zelotes, so there was Zealot. There were sects, but the majority of them came from the mainstream, which looked to the Pharisees as his teachers and spiritual leaders. I'm going to skip a lot of this other stuff. But basically, the Pharisees put primary importance on the oral Torah as Rabbinic Judaism does today. So if you look into Rabbinic Judaism, which I don't recommend it, the Talmud is made up of two parts. It's made up of the Mishnah, which is the oral law, and it's made up of the Gemara, which is the commentary on the Mishnah, the rabbinic commentary on the Mishnah. So it's basically saying when Moses was up on the mountain, he was given the written law, but he was also given the oral law. And the oral law is just as important as the written law. And so all these various traditions, etc., that we see that conflicted with Jesus' Mosaic interpretation of the law, such as, why are your disciples plucking grain and eating it on the Sabbath? Okay, all these various little nitpicky things. Jesus said, you strain at a gnat and swallow a, I can't remember exactly how the quotation goes. You strain at a gnat and, basically swallow an elephant. So, but anyway, the early disciples, they did have an oral tradition amongst themselves. There were other rabbis who had disciples. That was the tradition. And they would write their own little notes, their mnemonic little tools to help them remember what was said, take records, all types of ways. Right, in any book they had, they would make notes, they would write scrolls, they would do whatever they could. And from this direct experience with Yeshua and these notes, etc., that's where we get the New Testament. But it was all framed and held inside this first century Jewish worldview. Ironically, what happens with somebody who wants to go into the ministry today? Well, they go to uh, seminary and they take some Bible and they take some Hebrew and they take some Greek and this, that, and the other. And they come out, or they even before they come out, while they're there, and they study church history. And so they're proficient in historical interpretations of the Bible in some ways. They might know who the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, all that stuff was. And then they know church history. They know what Aquinas said. They know what, all the rest of them. And the progression through history. Now, I'm going to say something radical. I wish I had found, I put on here a quote from Twitter. I looked up and down and high and low and Google and everywhere. I could not find this quote. And I don't know where I encountered it, but basically what he said is because the majority of ministers today base their studies on church history, and the Bible itself must be interpreted with this first century Jewish worldview, then basically all the work they're doing is in vain. Because let me see if I can explain this to you. You know, in the first century, Lord help me, in the first century, this Jewish way of life, the Mosaic law, of course, the temple was destroyed 70 AD by the Romans. The city was leveled to the ground, just as Jesus had prophesied it would be. And this Rabbi Akiva that we talked about last time, he saw that if Judaism was to survive, they needed a new religion because Mosaic Judaism was no longer valid. It was all centered around the temple. It was all centered around the sacrifices. It was all centered around the burning of the incense. Well, all of that could no longer be observed because they had no temple. So what he created was Rabbinic Judaism. Now remember, Akiva and Saul had both been students at the same time. So you have this split between Shaul and Akiva forms the foundation for the false religion of Rabbinic Judaism, Talmudic Judaism, and Paul helps to form the foundation for this, belief in Yeshua. I'll just say that originally they were a sect that was considered a sect of those that believed in Yeshua. So there's that split there. Well, likewise, shortly after that, there's the creation of Roman Catholicism, which is also a false religion. So you have Roman Catholicism splitting off one way with its idolatry. You have Rabbinic Judaism splitting off the other way with its idolatry. And by the way, Akiva was also a supporter of a so-called Messiah, Bar Kokhba, in the early, I think 120, 130, something like that. And that rebellion against the Roman Empire led by Bar Kokhba ended up in the final dispersal of the Jews, and Rabbi Akiva was killed in that rebellion. So we need to think of it in this way. Now, there are all kinds of cults. There's the Mormons, Jehovah's. I'm not talking about them. But I'm talking about as far as the mainstream Judeo-Christian world, you've got this worldview that comes from first century Judaism, this mindset. You've got the mindset of Rabbinic Talmudic Judaism, um, which has become just completely dead, letter, etc. And then you've got Catholicism on the other side, which also is completely dead and lifeless, and is, you know, adopted all these forms of paganism and various occult practices. Talmudic Judaism, you get Kabbalah and this huge influence on Kabbalah, which is the occult branch of Rabbinic Judaism. So, the axe is laid to the root of the tree. We got to go back to the root. We have to go back to the root. If you want to understand it, you got to go back to the root. And so that's the goal. And my goal is to help clear away some of this junk. You can go and read Aquinas, you can go and read all these other guys, and I will tell you, what are they called, Jack? The ones that were sent from the Catholic Church to convert the Christians?
Crusaders.
Yeah, it starts with a J. I can't remember. It's a branch of, it's a sect of Roman Catholicism.
Oh, Jesuits?
Jesuits. You can sit down with a Jesuit today and they will spin your head around 10 times. I mean, they are more learned than learned can be. And, I talked to a friend of mine at work one time, this, precious guy, Tom. We got along, we talked a lot, and he even came to see me in the hospital. Really nice guy. He was from had a Latin American heritage. And he said, I struggled for so many years. And he said, I just couldn't believe, and I couldn't believe. And then I sat down with my Jesuit, and it all became clear to me. Well, I guess it did, because, if that's what you're looking for, you'll find what you're looking for. And so the gist of everything I'm trying to say, I think, is that you can say, well, I don't really care about that Hebrew junk, but you're not going to really get in touch with the mindset of Yeshua without understanding his worldview. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want to get in touch with the mindset of Yeshua. One other thing, and this is along the very same line. Again, I brought back this consistency of scripture here. Yeshua said he didn't come to abolish the law, okay, but to fulfill it, talking about the Torah. And so there is a biblical consistency that runs all through the Bible. And again, I'll send this out so that you guys have it. But the nature of God, the nature of Yeshua is consistent. The nature of the Holy Ghost is consistent. It's only when man gets involved and starts building up his layers of falsehood that, things get very complicated. And so, when you hear people making things just so overly complicated, that's when your ears need to kind of tick up and say, wait a second, because the gospel, the true gospel, is very, very straightforward. Now, it's not easy in the sense that it requires discipline, and it requires a certain kind of discipline that in many ways just far exceeds our um, Western concept of discipline. We think going to the gym for 30 minutes a day is discipline, you know, um, and that's not what we're talking about. So it it's easy, it's simple, but it's not easy in terms that there are costs. There are costs associated with following Jesus and with being his disciple. I think the best place to go would be to go to, well, I want to talk about a couple different things. I'll just kind of put them at the end, but to look at this, I want to look at this chapter in Joshua, just the first 8 verses. This chapter has been so, this is just an example, it has been so woefully mistreated by the prosperity preachers. But there's great truth in this passage if you can just sort it out from all this other stuff. And again, in Jesus' time, understand that there were the Herods of the world, and there were the Agrippas, and and all of those that were extremely wealthy. But the majority of the people were not. It wasn't a prosperous, wealthy culture in the way that the Western culture is. So I just want to go through here and show how this has been twisted. So Moses is dead, Deuteronomy 34, and now it's time for Joshua to take over. Only be strong and very courageous, and be careful, the Lord speaking to Joshua, to do all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn to the right or left, so that you may have success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. Now, I said there's great truth in here. So I want to really bring this out, okay? It shall not depart from your mouth. Pay the mouth as a means of blowing. So it's speaking literally about your mouth. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. Okay? But you shall meditate. And the word meditate there is haggah. And it's a primitive root meaning to murmur, to ponder, to imagine, to meditate. And so basically, the Lord's telling us this word, and we'll expand Torah, which is the word that's used there, this book of the law, the Torah. We'll expand that to, include the other scriptures that God has provided us. Of course, in Joshua's day, the Torah is all he had. You will meditate on it day and night. So the picture is we read our Bibles, and then we meditate. And I'm going to stick this in here. All right, I'm going to say it. I'm going to talk about Pavlov's. I hope most of you know about Pavlov's dog. So basically, what happened was Pavlov, who's some kind of a psychiatrist or something way back. I don't know. He may have been Russian. I don't know. But anyway, he was doing this experiments with dogs. And so, and just for those who don't know, so anyway, he would ring a bell and give the dog a treat. And then he would ring a bell and give the dog a treat. Ring a bell, give the dog a treat. Well, eventually it got to the point where he would ring the bell and the dog would start salivating. And so we need to make sure that our life doesn't become a recreation in sorts of Pavlov's dog. And I'm being really serious here. The cell phone rings, bam. We're after it. We're distracted. We're totally blown off. The whatever, the social media goes off. And social media is, believe it or not, at the root level, is constructed on that same principle. Because you're wanting a approval, and somebody comes on there, and they're like, "Man, you look great." Okay, bam, you get that jolt. I've really watched a lot about this. You get that jolt of, and basically it's the same thing as like the runner's high. I can't remember it might be endorphins, but you get that jolt in your body. It's almost like a drug. And over time you become addicted to that drug. And they have geared this whole system with that complete understanding, so that they're working almost, I'm not saying this disrespectfully, but it works at a basic level almost like Pavlov's dog. It's reward, it's reward, it's reward. And the algorithms are there to draw you in, and you go in, and then boom, you get the reward. I mean, we need to be very careful that we set aside time in our lives. No ringing, no buzzing, we set aside time in our lives to read God's word and to meditate on it. And I guarantee, if you read it and you sit down and you just begin to think it over and mutter on it, and if you don't have experience with this, one way I used to do in the beginning is, this book of the law, this book of the law, this book of the law shall not depart, shall not depart, shall not depart. I mean, if you have to go that basic, but if you just, mutter and imagine, meditate, let this go into your spirit, it will bear fruit. It will bear fruit. Now, what do I mean by that? Is that going to make you a millionaire? Well, let's see. Okay. So if we do that day and night, and you're careful to do, so there's three parts to it. You read the word, you meditate on it day and night, and then you do what it's telling you to do, those things, it will make your way prosperous. And prosperous is the word salach. Okay, so let's think about salak. Okay, so I didn't go through and um, but if you take your Bibles, and let me see what time it is. Yeah, we have time, so let's just do that. Let's look at Genesis 39:23. I'll give everybody a second to get there. Okay, so I just picked the three previous examples. So Genesis 39:23. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made him to prosper. Okay, so Joseph's in prison. He's not a millionaire. He doesn't have a collection of antiques, but the Lord makes him to prosper. We need to think of prosperity in this type of sense. Okay, Numbers 14:41. Turn over there. And Moses said to them, "Why are you transgressing the commandment of the Lord when it will not prosper, or it will not succeed?" So here it's talking in terms of their way will not prosper. In other words, it won't work. You won't have good success. You won't. It's not talking about prosperity the way we think about it. Now, Deuteronomy 28:29. if you're following with me. I was just going to say you could look them up afterwards, but since we have the time, we may as well look at this, the final one. I just took the previous three examples where this word salak was used. And we're at 28:29. Let's see. It's talking about what will happen to them when they disobey the Lord. You will grope at noon as a blind man gropes in darkness, and you will not prosper in your ways. Okay, there's nothing, no reference to money or no reference to being, you know, uh, recompense for some type of contribution you make. It's just talking about will you have success or will you not? And then the next word is sakal. Okay. So first of all, it will make your way prosperous. So we now have the understanding of how we're thinking about that, and you will have success. And the Hebrew word for success is sakal, which is to be circumspect, intelligent, instructed, expert. Okay. This is the same word that's used in talking about the masculine in the last days. Those who have insight, sakal, okay, among the people, will give understanding to the many. Yet they will fall by the sword, by flame, by captivity, by plunder. So sakal here doesn't mean success like, oh man, your life is going to be such a success. Okay, it means success in the Lord. It means you will be as one of the learned ones. So good in this verse, and then you have to reclaim the bad, which is we want to prosper in the Lord. We want to prosper in his ways. We want to prosper, in what we do. We don't want to continually be frustrated and feel like we're beating our head against the wall, which is a result of disobedience. We want to pursue the Spirit, read the Word, meditate on the Word, and then act on the Word so that we can have success and we can be prosperous. Okay, so there's a couple more things I wanted to cover real quick, and hopefully we'll have time. I mentioned this last time, but I really didn't get to it. The Aseret Hadibrot, I just want to throw this out there again. A lot of times when you talk about the law, Torah, um, a lot of people confine it to the Ten Commandments. And the best way I think I could describe it with the study that I've done is that the Ten Commandments is not the law. The law, there's more to the law than the Ten Commandments. But the Ten Commandments is kind of like the essential kernel of the law. And so if you obey the Ten Commandments, then you're keeping the essence of the law. Now, in Jewish understanding, the Ten Commandments are on two tables, 5 on this one, 5 on this one. Okay. And you have a table that's dedicated to the observance of commandments concerning God and your obedience to God. And then you have a table of commandments that have to do with your obedience to your neighbor or toward your neighbor. So let's just look through it real quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll have no other gods before me. You won't make a graven image of any other thing. You won't take the name of the Lord in vain. You will remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and you will honor your father and mother. And you might say, well, that's more should go with my neighbor. But it really doesn't, because it has to do with God's order and with God's plan, and with how God, you know, one who would disrespect his father or his mother, with, had that kind of attitude, is not going to respect God, because he's our heavenly Father. So we respect our earthly father and mother, because that's they're the earthly representation of our heavenly Father. Now the other tablet: you shall not kill, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, and you shall not covet. Okay, you can easily see how those have to do with the neighbor. And so when this lawyer stood up and he put Jesus to the test, this is from Luke chapter 10, he said, how do I inherit eternal life? And Jesus said to him, what's written in the law? And he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Tablet 1, tablet 2. And Jesus answered, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. And then it goes into the talking about the Good Samaritan. So in terms of the Aseret HaDibro, the 10 statements or the 10 commandments, you have this bifold. It's not just by nothing goes by chance with God. There's a reason they were written on 2 tablets. And so that's where we get, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, and you love your neighbor as yourself. So hopefully that's helpful. I knew we had talked about that last week and we never got back to it. And, this came up yesterday, and I really wanted to throw this in, even though I may not have time to really get to it. But Isaiah 50 said, the Lord has given me the tongue of the learned, that I might know how to sustain the weary one with the word. He awakens me morning by morning. He wakens my ear to listen as a disciple, as a instructed one. The Lord God has opened my ear. I was not disobedient, and I did not turn back. So I want to just say here real quickly, what is our goal? What is our goal? Our goal is to lift the weary, to bring a word, a word of sustenance, a word of life in this dark and weary world. And I can't remember if it was Corey Ten Boom or something I saw a while ago. She said, every time I encounter a person, I say, Lord, give me a word. Give me a word for this person. And we need to do the same thing. Of course, it has to be in God's timing and God's spirit moving, etc. Okay, so looking at this a little more carefully, he's given me the tongue of the limud. Here's the Hebrew word. The limud, which means the instructed, the disciple, the learned, the taught one. He's given me the tongue of that one, of the instructed one, that I may know how to sustain the weary one with the word. I like the King James better for this verse, if you have a chance to go look at it. Morning by morning, he awakens my ear to hear as the same word, limud, the instructed one. So there's been a process of instruction, right? Of discipline. Now, the Lord has opened my ear, and this word opened is patach, which means to dig, to carve, or engrave. It's a very graphic uh, uh, term, almost violent. The Lord has digged my ear, and I was not disobedient, and I did not turn back. So, right here in this little verse, 2 verses, you have the way of the disciple. The way of the disciple, morning by morning, gives him or herself to God, and he learns how to sustain the weary one, how to speak the word of life. Now, down here in Deuteronomy 15, there is the story of the bondservant. Okay, so the bondservant, he serves for 6 years. In the seventh year is the Shemitah. It's not the, I think I've got that term wrong. The seventh year is not the Jubilee. That's at the 50th year. But after 6 years of service, you're supposed to set him free. And you don't let him go away empty handed. You furnish him liberally so that he can go out and establish himself on his own. So you say, well, there was slavery in the Bible. Yes, but it was tempered with God said your slaves have to be well treated. And after 6 years, you have to let them go. And you have to set them up so that they can make it and survive on their own. And it shall come about if he says to you, I will not go out from you. I don't want to go away. I want to stay here, because he loves you and your household. And he's fared well with you. Then you'll take an awl, you put his ear on the doorpost, and you pierce his ear. And he shall be your servant forever. I think it's in Genesis 39 when Joseph says we're going to get up and go to Bethel. All of the people take their earrings and bury them at the root of the tree, because the earring is a symbol of listening, of hearing a false God. And they knew that going back to Bethel, they had to get rid of all that stuff. So when he received this pierced ear, this digged ear, he was saying, I'm only going to listen to you. I'm not going to go out on my own. I'm not going to listen to others. And this is what Isaiah 50 is referring to. He's digged my ear. I was not disobedient. I did not turn back. So I guess what I'm trying to get across is, if we want to deliver the word of life to others, there's a discipline that must be undergone. And it's a costly way. And that means that you have set apart time for the Lord. You have read this Bible. You have meditated on it. And all this is part of the discipline. Morning by morning. In Joshua, it said day and night. Okay, we become disciples. We become the sakal. We become the masculine, the instructed ones, the ones that are learned, the ones that can be trusted, right? To speak forth the word of the Lord and to bring forth the word of life. So I know we're at the very top, and I didn't think we'd go this long, or I would go this long. But let me just stop there. Anybody with any questions or any comments?
I like that scripture we talked about yesterday. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver.
Thank you, Jack. I forgot. I was going to ask you to share that. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in setting of silver. That's what we're after. We're after that word that's fitly spoken. You know, you can preach the Bible at somebody from now until doomsday, and it won't change their mind. It won't, but I think about that story that Art Katz told. He'd been to visit Auschwitz, and his heart was just hard as it could be. He had no desire after the Lord or anything Christian after witnessing all that stuff. And he met this little girl, and she started talking to him about the Lord. She was a high school or college age girl. And he asked her, he's like, how do you know that this God of yours exists? And she just totally floored him. She said the one thing that could not be disputed. She said, I know because he lives inside of me. And I mean, it completely just went right to his heart. And, he couldn't dispute it with his intellect. Something I was reading, I can't think, one experience, one direct experience of God is worth, you know, all things. We need to have a personal relationship with God in these last days. We need to have direct experience that we can rely on. We need to know that God did this for me when I was in need. God touched me here when I was, we need to know these things so that we can go back and rely on them and call that back to memory. So I'll let that go. It's 9:00. Anybody else? Quickly. Lord bless you. Lord watch over you and keep you in the coming week. May he bless you. May his face shine upon you. May he give you good success in all that you do as we pursue him. May he give us good success as we pursue him and walk after his word. In the name of Yeshua, we ask it, Abba, and we believe we receive. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much. Lord willing, we'll be here next week. We'll see
Thank you,
you then.
Murray. Thank you.
Thank you.